We're back, and we got Downtown with us again to go over the piss poor performance, I guess. No. Okay, well, of the Vegas game. Let's start with the Vegas game because, and I guess the Colorado can be a little bit grouped into that because I was the only one out of these two who watched Vegas. Did you watch Vegas, Downtown?
Yes, I did.
Terrible game. Objectively awful 45 minutes of that game where I haven't seen them play as bad. Actually, like even the Pittsburgh game, they at least had some zone time that they lost 7-1 or whatever. What were your thoughts on the Vegas game? Let's start with that.
So it was interesting to me. I'm actually going to go back to the Colorado game to talk about the Vegas game and then maybe even jump ahead a little bit and talk about the Arizona game because there were some commonalities between three games.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Sheldon Keefe came out and said it after the Vegas game, but he did come out and say it after the Colorado game. And 100% last night came out and said it after the Arizona game. Everybody looks gassed. They can only play one period right now. And I don't know what that is. Is that them just not having the conditioning right now? Is that not playing very much over the last 3 weeks or so, not practicing very much, the whole team having come off of COVID and having various symptoms? I don't know. Or is it just them being bad, or is it the other team being really good?
I think your answer was the right answer, all of them.
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit of a combination of all of them, right? Because going into the Colorado game, this was a team that had won 20 out of their last 25 games and only lost in regulation once, I think, since like the end of October. And the game against Arizona was their second regulation loss since then. They've won 21 out of their last 28 games.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm having a hard time being upset, but I definitely do. You know, you can't brush it off as nothing. And in that Vegas game, it really was one period, right? After one period of play in that Vegas game, they led the shot attempts 19-7. The actual shots 8-5. The scoring chances were 10-3 at 5-on-5. They absolutely kicked the crap out of the Golden Knights in that first period. And then in the second and in the third, it was basically all Jack Campbell.
Yeah. And literally no one else except Willie he was the only one that I could see like having consistent effort out there. Sandin with 10 hits. That is an honorable mention. But as we were saying,
the body.
As we were saying in our post game, it's a lot easier to hit people when you don't have the puck. You know,
we actually out hit a team.
It is
just like how the Sens led the league in hits last year. But like what we were talking about, especially after the Colorado game, is because Din and I both just had COVID, and I had like a respiratory infection for a week, almost 2 weeks after the first 7 days. So some of these guys are probably going through it. Tavares had similar symptoms that I had, and then they're playing at elevation in Colorado, the highest elevated arena in North America. All of those things combined, you play one period, and then it's kind of, and then even in Arizona, if you can, like, I don't know. I just
air. plus that shitty part where you actually have to like go to Arizona.
Well, I think the main thing is that teams now have found a way to beat the Leafs, and it's by putting in a goalie that no one's ever really heard of, or like just grab the nearest
Dan
guy working.
Dude, that goalie did not have enough vowels in his name to be a name. There's no way.
Before we jump in and talk about the goalie here, I wanted to mention something that Isaac did, and that's John Tavares, because I've gotten a lot of comments in my comment section over the last week or so saying, "Where's John Tavares?" And it's just like, if you watch the press conference that he had talking about his experience with having COVID, it sounds like he had pretty full-blown symptoms. Yeah. And when we're talking about, you know, all the things that we were talking about, the elevation, not having played very much, lingering possible symptoms, it's just, it probably hasn't skated very much.
Well, like, we were in isolation, man. It was 10 days of me. I was literally 10 days of my own filth. Like, walking upstairs, I'm like, oh my God.
Well, John Tavares was saying
Iron Man feels.
He was saying that he had like the cold sweats for the first 3 nights, and it was bad for another 2 days, and then it started to get progressively better. And like, I still have a couple coughing fits through the day, and it's been 3 weeks later.
So, you guys playing at like 5% less is different than us living at 5% less. Where like the hardest thing I do is pick up my Xbox controller and lose in Warzone.
Yeah,
So
70 damage in our last game. That was pretty good.
yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
But yeah, I just like the Leafs have just looked slow the second, and that's I want to get your opinion downtown on Jake Muzzin, because that's the one guy that I've noticed repeatedly more like throughout the season, yes, but especially the last few games where he has just looked even slower than the start of the season. We were worried about him at the start of the season. Is that how you see it?
Well, surprisingly enough, just taking a look at the box score, some stats from that Vegas game where the Leafs were killed in the second and the third period there was only one real forward line that had solid stats all throughout, and that was the Bunting, Matthews, Kasha line. But if you're looking at Jake Muzzin and Justin Hall from that game, the underlying numbers weren't that bad. I can't remember any specific instances where you might have been upset with them, just because everything's been a blur the last 2 weeks because I've been all over the place. But my sort of thinking was, hey, maybe if he's got some sort of lingering injury going on that's, physical, like something is torn or sprained or just nagging him, maybe having the last couple of weeks where he can kind of just lay low would be, somewhat beneficial. But it hasn't necessarily been the case. I do see that slowness, like that slowness is there for the whole team, right? Like I don't necessarily like picking
Except Willie.
Sorry?
Except Willie.
Except Willie and Austin last night too.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
absolutely all
But
over the place.
Austin never got COVID. Austin was one of the guys that didn't get it.
It's him and Hall, I think, were the only two guys that didn't.
And Bunting.
And Bunting.
And I don't know anything, but Austin Matthews is probably objectively the guy who probably goes out the most.
But
I don't know. I don't obviously know, but
in terms of Jake Muzzin, it's just something that we're going to have to ride through, and we're going to have to watch each and every game. And if good things happen, good things happen. If bad things happen, bad things happen.
Teacher, I have a question.
Sure. What's up?
Can we not watch him be slow with Justin Hall beside him?
See, and that was the thing, because the guy who you would see play with him other than Justin Hall, Timothy Liljegren, he got into his first game action since coming back from having COVID last night, and he looked discombobulated and all over the place. And so did Travis Dermott as well. Travis Dermott's been playing a lot on the right side this year. They've thrown him over to the left side in that game yesterday, and that was a mess. I don't think I want to see Dermott Liljegren again as a pairing for at least a long time, unless it's like an emergency situation. It's something where, see, like I was saying in my video yesterday, like I don't know what expectations to have. I don't know whether to be angry, to let it slide. I don't know what things to be critical of. Because obviously the Jake Muzzin, Justin Hall things, those have been things that have been happening for the whole season and not just, the last month or so or the last 2 weeks. So maybe we can, pay a little bit more attention to that and say, hey, it wasn't going well. Now I understand this happened, but we really need you to be better. And that's what it is. Yeah. Really, like, we're not picking on the guy. We're not saying bad things about him just because we just really want to see him be better. Right.
Yeah. Would it be wrong to say that, like, the last, I don't know how many games we played, 35, I don't know, whatever, that there hasn't been a stretch of like 5 or more games where like we haven't mentioned something about Muzzin and Hall?
The most that's Hall.
No, I know. Well, and I was saying last episode, I think downtown, that, Muzzin was picking up Hall, right? Muzzin was playing so well that he picked Hall up the same way Brody kind of does for Riley, but Brody just is the like missing puzzle piece to Riley's inefficiencies. Meanwhile, like Muzzin literally just makes Hall look better because he's way better. Maybe Muzzin's at a point in his career now that he can't make other players better, but that doesn't mean that he's not a solid player. He just needs someone beside him that he doesn't have to constantly think about. Dude, I watch this fucking Leafs game all the time, and I'm thinking, like, we need a third defenseman out there to hold Hall up. So, like, I only imagine that Jake's thinking the same thing, right? He's the one who actually has to play with him, right? Like, obviously, he's never going to say anything, but I can't help but think every time he's out on the ice, he goes, oh, well, I'm stuck with this fucking idiot again.
Well, he may. They're actually quite good friends, so I don't know. I don't know if he would be thinking that. But
would he rather play with TJ Brody or Justin Hall?
Well, yeah.
Okay, well, then there you go. That's my question.
But they're not going to come out and say, You know,
No-
if there
no
was something
chance.
wrong with Jake Muzzin, they're not going to come out and say, hey, this is what's specifically wrong about him.
No, but also
know?
if you take 2 or 3 weeks off at Christmas and you're not healed by that time, that injury is so bad you need to have surgery. You know what I mean? Like, if
What
it's an
was the injury that caused him to miss last year's playoffs? And
Is
then
it
the playoffs
ankle?
was it a
before
knee or
that?
hip? It was
Mark, do you mind looking
leg.
that up?
It was leg
Yeah.
something.
Sure.
It was like a back. I believe in the Columbus series, he got cross-checked into the boards, and that was like a back
Yeah.
issue or something like that, or a shoulder or a neck problem. And then last year
All
against
the
the Canadians,
above.
maybe it was like a hamstring or something, like he pulled something, a knee or something like that. You know, everything's connected, right? And he
Yeah.
hasn't necessarily had surgery or anything like that the last couple of years. There could be something nagging there. I don't know. I'm not going to play doctor. I'm not going to speculate or anything like that. And the fact that they won't come out and say, you know, what it is only leaves us to left just be wondering.
Yeah,
I
and they
mean,
just
we can
said
only make
lower
educated
body
guesses.
injury in
Yeah,
the playoffs. So they still didn't even back then
No.
say
Because
what
they
it was.
mentioned stuff. Because they
Like-
mentioned stuff at the end of the season, right? They'll usually be like, "Oh, he was dealing with this," right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And they did it, which kind of tells me that maybe this is just a problem. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
like especially
Wow.
I believe it was like after the 17-18 playoffs, but maybe the 18. I don't know. The Bruins losses get mixed together.
All,
But
they're
I
all the
remember
same.
I was working a shift at Home Depot and my phone buzzed and I pulled out my phone and I looked and it said that Zach Hyman was playing the rest of the series with a torn ACL and I was like, huh, maybe that's why the penalty kill was so bad. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like there are shocking injuries like that maybe you don't see when you're watching the game or no one really knows about other than the training staff and maybe a couple of guys on the team.
Yeah.
Um,
Even the Mick
I don't know,
Foligno
we'll never know.
last
Yeah,
year, like they didn't
Yeah.
really say it until the end.
No,
We
Then
didn't
he kinda
really
came
know how
back and he
bad that
sucked.
was. Yeah, we didn't really know how bad that was until like the Amazon doc. You see him like on the floor, like hunched over, like he's in pain. Like
Yeah.
that,
looked like Walter White getting tortured.
it's an image.
The way I see the Arizona game is, I was saying this to Mark on our Vegas post game, is like we did not deserve the 2 points in Vegas. Like we didn't even deserve 1 point in that game, and the fact that we somehow came out and won, it's just like there's gonna be games like that, and there's gonna be games like Arizona where you just face a goalie who is on his fucking game. And that's why I'm not upset about it, because it's like we still outplayed them the way that we should outplay them. We just didn't put the puck in the net. And there's going to be times where that happens to us and times against us. And an interesting stat actually that they said on the broadcast in the Vegas game was that before the Colorado 4-1 lost lead, we were actually number 1 in the league in protecting leads. So the narrative that like the Leafs, it's like, oh, it always happens to us. We only pick the games where it does happen to us. For other teams, the shit probably happens. It's just because it's a playoff, you know?
So what you're saying is that it was TSN's fault for pointing that out.
Yeah, it's like a shutout. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like whenever we make predictions,
Oh.
we go, it's going to be 5-1. Yeah, we never say it's going to be a 4-0 or something. But it's just like everyone on Leafs Twitter and stuff like that was like, oh, it's such a Leafs thing to do. And like, granted, yeah, we've had notoriously bad giveaway, but like other teams do. It's just we're the Leafs. We're the ones who get made fun about it. And like, I'm not in the Colorado game. We still, like, the possession numbers were the same. They outshot us, but a lot of the shots were to the outside. I don't know what the goal chance is. I don't know if you know that downtown, but like
I have that in front of me.
Oh, so I know
second.
Veliamka had 4.9 goals.
Wait,
saved
hold on.
above
Hold on.
expected.
Hold on.
I'm not
What's his
repeating
name?
that name.
What's
I'm not
his
repeating
name?
that name. No, there's no chance. I told you already. He doesn't have enough vowels in there. I can't fucking compute that. My brain's running on 2 fucking brain cells right now. What do you expect of me, guys?
The scoring chances at 5-on-5 in the Colorado game were actually 27-26 Leafs. And they also led the high danger shot attempt share as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And in that passed the eye test too. So it's like, yeah, there's just going to be games. And in the end, we're on a Western road trip after everyone had COVID and we're splitting points.
Yeah.
No?
And I mean, another popular thing that I saw was that people were talking about Sheldon Keefe saying, oh, the group looks really tired. And they were like, what do you mean looks really tired? They had 46 shots on goal and they absolutely took it to the Coyotes. And if you remember, like an earlier point of contention in the regular season and in the playoffs as well was getting those second and third opportunities. And it didn't look like they had very many of them last night against Vemelka. But
tomato.
but maybe that's where Sheldon Keefe was talking and saying that the team looked gassed. They just didn't have the energy that it required to get those second and third opportunities to make the initial ones they had, dangerous. Of course, they also hit a couple of posts. He made a couple of very nice saves, not to diminish what Vemelka was able to accomplish there, Dan, but
Honka?
I thought you were talking about Julius Honka at first, and I was like,
no, I think it was something in between. But actually, I have a question for you, Downtown, because I know I didn't watch Keefe's post game against Arizona there, and you just mentioned that he said they came out tired. Did he say that again? Because he did say that after the Colorado game.
Yeah. He said it. He said it after the Colorado game. I don't know if he said it after the Vegas game, but obviously the Vegas game, they played an absolutely amazing first period and then just shitty second and third period. But yeah, he came out again and said it after the Arizona game.
Yeah.
Sheldon Keefe came out pissed after the Vegas game, saying we need to play better. Like, he was the hardest on them, the one where they won.
And Willie came out and he was like, our line played awful. Like everyone on our line played awful.
I love that.
That was the guy who scored and got the shootout winner.
Yeah.
But
to be fair to Willie, they did play awful looking at the stats here.
Yeah.
they did play quite awful.
Yeah.
Would you look at that? They do suck.
Pull out a big scribe.
Honestly, if you have Willie saying you suck, it was the same way that I said if Sheldon Keefe never gives these guys any excuses, if he's coming out and saying they look tired, that's not a chirp against them, right? That's him saying there is something else going on. He never gives them any fucking leeway, any leeway, right?
And they're also
and they're like, nah.
Yeah, and they're also not going to play the card of, oh, we're tired, feel bad for us because we've had so many COVID cases, because there's also so many other teams around the league that have been affected like this. Like looking at the Vegas, they didn't have Shea Theodore. There was another player.
There was two other players.
There's two other players that didn't
was it
play.
Smith?
Maybe, but they also didn't have Alec Martinez. There was no Max Pacioretty in that game. The Colorado Avalanche had a number of players who were out before and after Christmas on COVID protocol. It's just, and even last night, Arizona, they didn't practice one day. They had to shut it down.
Yeah.
They also suck. That's another thing too.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, we were looking at their center depth. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, you know what Toronto probably did? They're like, let's lose so Montreal's in last.
I saw a tweet about that. Yeah.
They're in last now.
Yeah.
Worth the L.
Please don't let Montreal get right in the draft.
No.
Please don't. No,
let them get wrong instead.
Oh my God.
It was right there and didn't touch it.
I know.
I wanted to bring up the reffing thing, because reffing has been a hot topic on Leafs Twitter. I saw at the Vegas game, and I sent these guys, since they missed the Vegas game, the Clifford penalty. Now, for me, and personally, the reffing to me, yes, it's been shitty. I haven't noticed one game, and I try and be very objective about watching it, where like if the Leafs get a penalty, I'm like, oof, like either way, I'm always trying to be objective, because I don't want to be those guys who's like only penalties should be called on the other team. But objectively, the last couple games has been bad reffing, and I haven't noticed one game where it's been the opposite for the Leafs. Now, I don't want to say there's like a conspiracy or anything, because I definitely don't think, and refs are doing their best. I also don't think it's an explanation for why they lost to Vegas.
No. So going into that game, I showed a stat in one of my videos. I'm going to try to remember it off the top of my head. I believe that the Colorado Avalanche were close to top 5 in penalties taken per 60 this year. Vegas was like 20th, and the Leafs are like the 6th fewest or something like that. And in those two games, the Leafs took 9 penalties, and they only had 3 power play opportunities. And it's just like, with how good Colorado is on the power play and how good the Vegas Golden Knights, it doesn't matter if they have injuries, move the puck in the offensive zone, you're not going to win very many games if you're giving those guys opportunities on the power play.
Yeah,
you're just not. I don't care what their percentage is. Maybe, you know, that's me remembering them from a couple of years ago.
Dude, they're nasty.
They were awesome.
They're nasty.
They were awesome a couple of seasons ago, and they still have a lot of those same players on the team.
Yeah. And Nick Ritchie isn't doing himself any favors to stick with this team if he keeps taking penalties in the final 2 minutes.
Oh, he scored that goal, and I was getting comments
I'm so happy.
I was getting some comments going, oh, look at you shitting on Nick Ritchie. And there he is, redeeming himself, scoring that goal. And then he takes the penalty with like 2 minutes left. And I'm like,
comment,
no
deleted.
reason.
I'm like, Nick, we're dying here. The ship is sinking, and we're just trying to coast into land here to get this game into overtime.
Yeah,
and you're taking penalties.
I love when guys take penalties with less than 2 minutes left, because like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, a cross check from behind, like
the guy's like, oh, game's almost over, gonna go into overtime too soon. Cross check in the back of the head.
Yeah,
against
Colorado.
He was thinking, you know what? I have to leave my mark on the game right now, because once it goes into overtime, I'm going to be stapled to the bench.
Yeah, exactly.
No, genius, because then he comes out of the box, he gets to play.
the long skate across the ice.
2000 IQ played. He might look like there's not much up there, but I guarantee you there is.
Downtown, I wanted to ask, because there's a lot of things on Twitter going around about like the Austin Matthews not getting as many penalties against. Now, what is the actual? I know we talked about it briefly in the last podcast, but to date, do you have any idea of what the actual stat is in like comparison to other star players in terms of his drawn penalties?
No, but if you guys want to carry on the conversation, I can get the number.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, because I've seen like a few Twitter takes of like Matthews is only like drawn. It was at first it was like 0 penalties, and then it became 4,
like a month ago, right?
And then it's all of a sudden shot up. But like I just know since McDavid, I saw this was one since McDavid kind of chirped the reffing, he's gotten like quadruple more penalties called against. Yeah, than Matthews.
Wow.
And you got to wonder if
so Connor McDavid right now leads the NHL in penalties drawn at 5-on-5.
Yeah.
Michael Bunting is tied for second, and Manson is third. Scrolling down here, let me see if I can just filter this out, because Austin Matthews is nowhere to be found.
Nazem Kadri will make it all back when he gets suspended in the first round.
It's unfortunate.
Well, you know, that doesn't make so much sense that Austin Matthews should be getting penalties. I mean, he only has the puck most of the time. He constantly is around people and deking around them. And like he always gets around them, and sometimes he bobbles the puck. I don't know why he usually bobbles the puck. Does it have to do with maybe getting slashed or something? Is that a penalty in the NHL? I forget. Hooking?
He's just got such tree trunk. Go ahead.
So Austin Matthews, out of forwards in the NHL at 5-on-5, ranks 353rd.
That's not okay. There's something going on there.
Yeah.
12 times 32 is 384, by the way.
Natural
32
stat
times 12 is 384.
Natural stat trick is crediting him with 2 penalties drawn at 5-on-5 so far this year.
Wow.
And there's 353 forwards to have played, I guess, at 5-on-5 so far this.
Can you tell us the person after Austin Matthews?
Jonathan Marchessault. But so Austin Matthews is 353rd on this list. There's only 599 guys to even play at least a second.
And one of them is Nick Ritchie, so it doesn't even count.
I mean, if we want to filter it out so that we can see some, you know, like more like starters and stuff like that. So like, let's put up, throw up 250 minimum minutes at 5-on-5 here, and then look at the penalties drawn. I mean, it's only 2, right? It's 2.
Yeah, it's not going to be high anyways. You don't even have to filter it because it's 2.
So there's 352 forwards to have played at least 250 minutes at 5-on-5 so far this year, and Austin Matthews is tied for the 338th least penalties drawn.
That's literally insane, man.
So what's your hypothesis of why that is?
Well, I mean, I tweeted about it last night, among a lot of other things. I was on fire. I was looking for, I'm like, who wants it?
You want some?
You want some? I'm angry. And I was just giving it to
fucking 1 a.m.
So, Let me just pull up the tweet really quickly here. So this was with about 8 minutes left to go in the third period. And I tweeted out, the Leafs are playing faster tonight and still not getting any calls. No way in 50 plus minutes and 42 shots of Harlem Globetrotters that the Coyotes only committed 2 infractions. This is a mercy. Like, they took those first 2 penalties, I believe, in the first period back to back. No?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like they didn't call any for the rest of the game. And I know that most of those shots for the Leafs came in the first period, but they were still all over them in the second and in the third.
Yeah.
So they didn't commit any infractions at all, not one. The Leafs had the puck almost the entire game.
Yeah.
And what?
It'd be interesting.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it'd be interesting to actually ask the refs why that is, right? Because could you not ask? You could probably find quite a few players, or you could probably find quite a few players in like the Austin Matthews loop.
Okay, the Leafs got 2 power plays yesterday. Does anyone want to waver a guess at how many penalties they took?
5? Is it 5?
3.
2.
I'll go 4.
2.
Oh.
They evened it up 2-2.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Classic.
so it's just like, if you're looking at a game like that where it was so one-sided and it was so much going to be a killing, it was going to be a slaughtering from the beginning. And without Vejmelka, it would have been a slaughtering. And without the couple of posts, it would have been a slaughtering.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the refs needed to give some sort of reason to keep all the Leaf fans in the building on the edge of their seat, right? Because they were the only ones that were there.
Yeah.
There was literally just blue in the crowd all the way around.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not one to complain about the referees. The only time that I do is when it's egregious. And over the last couple of games, it's been egregious. And also when they're putting players in danger by just letting the players police themselves.
You know, it's funny.
Get out of hand pretty fast.
Times that I'll complain.
So I just remembered now, there might have been a little bit of extracurriculars going on last night, and I didn't end up replying. I just remembered I did see your tweet because I woke up from my nap and I watched the last period downtown, the one about infractions. And I was like, it was something along the lines of, oh, you don't want to lose, you don't want to turn Arizona's revenue from negative 100 million to negative 99 million, and thus making the Leafs revenue fucking $1 billion to $2 billion, right? The amount, having the game be 5-1 for the Leafs will make the NHL so much more money than the Leafs losing 2-1. So I don't understand this parity thing, because
they don't see it like that though.
I just don't know how
they
you
want
can.
Everybody even. Because because it's not about the name on the back. It's not even about the crest on the front. It's just about the National Hockey League as a whole.
But they care about money though, right? Because they don't care about being a good league.
Yeah,
because you can't.
They want the money a very specific way. They want it to be everyone's doing. They don't want the credit to be going more one way or the other. The NHL, there's already a monopoly on which owners run the league.
Yeah.
Right. It's like 4 guys.
Yeah, it's like the Jerry Jones of the NFL. You know, there's like a few guys who like make the real decisions.
Rangers, Kings, Leafs, Habs.
Well, I mean, yeah, and for that, like they want, because the states, the dollar is more, the taxes are less. They want to grow the game in places where like big networks will pick it up. Sorry, TSN Sportsnet, you aren't ESPN and Fox Sports. Like those are the ones that they want to grow the game with. So having teams which are better and draw more fans in from the United States is going to make them a lot more money. And the way they rationalize it probably is it's going to make a lot more money for Canadian teams as well.
Well, also like the journalist in me, like I was frustrated last night with the Leafs obviously losing the game, and it's Austin Matthews' only homecoming that he gets every year. But it is a good story, right? Mm-hmm. That Karel Vejmelka, I believe is his name.
I like didn't
stopped 45 out of 46. He's in his rookie year this year. If you're looking at who he was, because they traded away the other 2 goalies that they had last year. Sorry, they traded Aiden Hill.
Classic.
They traded Aiden Hill. They traded Darcy Kemper. And they let Antti Ranta walk. They had 3 goalies last year, and they started this year with none. This was the guy. This was the guy who they threw in there as sacrificial fodder to lead their tank season.
Yeah.
And to see him stop 45 out of 46 against the Leafs, cool. But also Ryan Dzingel is not a rookie. He is not someone who I need to appreciate the story for. And the fact that he scored twice last night and has 16 points in 18 career games against the Leafs just makes me want to just throw things. It just I doesn't make any sense, whether it is with the Ottawa Senators or the Columbus Blue Jackets or the Carolina Hurricanes. It doesn't, or the Arizona Coyotes now. It does not matter. Ryan Dzingel put some money down.
Yeah.
Should we mention Mrazek's play at all? No one's really talking about him, and that was like all eyes were supposed to be on that guy for this game.
Keith had a quote after the game that said, "A goalie can't win if you don't score," or something like that. I'm definitely paraphrasing. Yeah, and you can't he still had a sub 900 save percentage. I wouldn't say either of the goals were necessarily his fault.
Second one.
The first one was pretty fluky. Like it bounced off the glass back out front to an open.
So it's his first game back in how long? A long ass time. So I don't know. I don't think any less of him. I think that he can establish himself to be worth his contract at least for this year. And it's a hell of a great thing that we have him as our backup if should anything happen to Jack Campbell. Worth mentioning too is Eric Kallgren is having a pretty good season with the Marlies. So we have a couple, we have Kallgren and Wall who are their prospect within the next couple of years that we could possibly have finally some homegrown goalie depth from the Leafs organization instead of having to go out and get guys.
There's also Keith Petruzzelli who's playing with the Newfoundland Growlers right now. I don't know if their season is paused right now or not, or if they've resumed, but he was having a decent little run. Yeah.
And Scott has just fallen off the map.
And Justin Pogge's coming up soon too.
Okay, what were you saying?
But Isaac, you took the route of being, positive towards the Peter Mrazek situation or being optimistic about it. I mean, there is the other side, and I guess I can take that. Is that you mentioned, this was his first game back in a while. Well, so was the other game that he played. Right? How many times this year are you going to say, it was his first game back in a while? And then, what could you really expect? I mean, in the next couple of months, not for the rest of January, because Sheldon Keefe commented on it a couple of days ago, saying that they're in a unique spot right now where you don't really get to have at least 2 days between every game in the month of January like they do right now. Their next game is on Saturday against the Blues. So there's 3 days of rest between there. I would expect Jack Campbell to go. And they said that they were going to lean on Jack Campbell for the rest of January because they need to keep him fresh. But he also mentioned the importance of getting Peter Mrazek in there as well, because when the schedule starts to condense and tighten, they're going to need him. So Peter Mrazek, the first half of this year, here's where I guess I'm sort of coming back around to the optimist side here. Write it off. Write off the first half of this year. Whatever. It happened. Forget about it. We survived.
Yeah.
But the second half of this year, we're going to really need you, buddy. And it would be nice if you can get back into it and find some sort of groove, because the 2 goals that you allowed yesterday, I'm not going to, get all red and scream and stuff like that about them, but they looked like goals that you would allow if you hadn't played in a while.
Yeah. And realistically, you can look at it in the way of he's a trade deadline acquisition, right? You can look at it in that sense where you basically got him as a free agent for nothing. And it's when we got Rittich, who was supposed to be our great third guy, we got Mrazek, and for the second half of the season, he can still be that guy, right?
Mm-hmm. They're not going to have to go out and spend a 3rd round pick on a goalie at this year's deadline. I don't even know if they have a 3rd round pick to spend.
No, they don't have a 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th.
You're pretty quick on that, Dan.
He's the pessimist of this podcast. I try and be the optimist. Mark's the neutral, and Tim just shits on everything about the Leafs. Speaking of shitting on everything about the Leafs, now we're going to quickly get your opinion on Mitch Marner.
Mine?
Oh, no.
No, not yours.
All right, so I'm going off screen. Bye.
We've been talking a little bit about Marner's power play minutes, and we know that this is something where it's their power play, isn't it like number one in the league? Are we still number? Yeah. So like
It is.
we can.
Wow.
We've
been crapping on it.
Yeah. And so Din's point is that like, well, I guess all of us probably agree that Matthews can play with whoever. He's shown that he can play with Kerfoot and Bunting. He can show that he can play with Cash and Bunting. He doesn't have to play with anybody. And we've talked about Marner being, especially in the last game before he got COVID, was a few times when you could tell he was just looking for Matthews, and it was like, just take the shot or like look for another avenue because
Please shoot.
Yeah. And he was just like, he passed it to nobody because it was just so obvious that he was going for Matthews and that it might have an effect on how those guys are playing together, because if everyone knows what Marner's going to do, and we've been talking about that on the power play, because you have Marner in a position, which is the other shooting position. You have three shooting positions at the top of the umbrella. You have Riley, you have Matthews, and you have Marner. Now, Riley's never been known as a shooter, and Marner has never been known as a shooter. So you're immediately taking two of those positions and you're kind of like canceling them out as like Matthews is getting the puck, Matthews is going to shoot the puck from there. So like, even though their power play has been successful, it can be something repeatedly we've seen in the playoffs. The power play gets figured out by other teams when they get to plan for it, for when they're just playing for that one team. And I think that it's largely because you can shut them down by just taking Matthews out of the equation, because Marner's not going to shoot. And Riley's he never taken Clapper, I don't think, in his life. So like on Tampa Bay, they have Kucherov on the one side, they have Hedman on the top, and they have Stamkos on the other side. 3 shooting threats at all times. You can't stop that, right? But if you take away 2 of those, that's just my opinion. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's no, like, I'm actually writing an article right now for the LeafsNation.com where I'm looking at if Anze Kasha should stay in the Maple Leafs' top 6 long term. And I don't want to spoil the entire article, but the top line of Bunting, Matthews, and Marner should be the top line. Yeah, they are one of the best lines in the entire NHL, and Matthews and Marner are one of the best duos in the regular season. You can make some sad noises after I said that, but you have to say regular season.
Fine, you're
after
right.
That. But you know, in writing this article, I'm looking at Austin Matthews' numbers with and without Mitch Marner over the last 2 seasons. And surprise, surprise, right? The elite goal scorer is better with the elite playmaker. But Mitch Marner without Austin Matthews the last 2 seasons has been kind of average. And that's scary to say. But I mean, it sort of makes sense, right? Like the elite playmaker needs the elite goal scorer in order to be good.
Question.
Right? Yes, Dan.
Well, I'm guessing because you did a lot of the research. I don't know how close you are to being done the article, but has Marner always played basically on Matthews or Tavares' wing in the last 3 years? Has there really been any time when he hasn't?
For
since
the most
Kadri
part,
left?
there was Tavares' first year here where he scored 47, I think.
Yeah.
He was stapled to him basically all season long. The year before that, it was a mix of playing with Van Riemsdyk and Bozak. He played on the fourth line that one game.
Bozak, the laziest player on the team.
So it's like, but for the most part, over the last 2 seasons, yeah, Mitch Marner's been stapled to Austin Matthews. And like I said, Austin Matthews is at his best with Mitch Marner. But Austin Matthews without Mitch Marner is still really, really good. But Mitch Marner without Austin Matthews has been shockingly average over the last 2 years or so. And that's just at 5-on-5, right? On the power play, Mitch Marner brings a lot. On the penalty kill, Mitch Marner brings a lot. Late in the game, he brings a lot. He's able to contribute in other ways to this team. But if we're looking at just from the power plays perspective, I haven't written that part of the article yet, but I have looked up some other numbers and stuff like that using the heat maps from hockeyviz.com, which are very nice because it shows you like what specific side and area of the ice where the offense is coming from. And then you can watch the replay and see who's standing there. So you can see who's causing the dead space in the ice and who's causing all the fireworks to go off, right? Mitch Marner on the Maple Leafs' power play. The Maple Leafs' power play is better with Mitch Marner on it than it is without him. But my article is about Anze Kasha. And in looking at Anze Kasha on the Maple Leafs power play, the Maple Leafs power play, in the limited amount of minutes, mind you, that Kasha's been able to play there, has been better than what it's been with Marner on it.
So you can actually, if you want to do this, I've got something for your article. One sec. You can actually figure out how, what would be a better usage of Marner if you want to do it this way. You can actually calculate with Marner. Has Marner been on that second power play unit at all?
I don't believe so.
No.
I don't believe so.
Fuck.
But-
You want that so bad, Dan.
But
no. But all you have to do is, let's say if he goes, let's say he does eventually go on it, or anyone goes. You can do if Willie's on the second compared to the first, and you can even do that where all you have to do is take the goals scored divided into the time, and you can see how many goals per second they score, and then put the average of actually the average amount of time on ice they have a game.
This is. It's showing the expected goals for per 60.
Yeah,
and showing it relative to when
That's
they're
wild.
on the ice and off the ice.
Well, like it wouldn't even be expected. This would be literally a goal. Like you wouldn't need to do expected goals.
You know, that as well. But like when you're looking at the Maple Leafs' power play, with Mitch Marner on it compared to without, they use more of the zone when he's there. I can see like the area like where they're generating offense from when he is there is pretty much the entire zone. But when he's not there, it collapses a little bit more towards the front of the net. And that loans itself to the second unit with guys like Nick Ritchie and Jason Spezza and Michael Bunting. In years past, I would never be in favor. In fact, in the offseason, I screamed about it for at least a good 2 minutes, to the point where I was so like a lot more red than what I am right now. Like there are varying shades to this depending on what's going on. Like I didn't expect to be that angry sitting down recording the video that I did. It kind of just came out of left field, and I just went on a tangent after
your inner dangle came out.
After I stumbled upon the stat, there was no way putting that back in.
Yeah.
Right? Where John Tavares, Austin Matthews, and William Nylander, compared to other team stars last season anyway, didn't play that much on the power play. Like they didn't get as much of the puck. Like if you're looking at a Draisaitl or an Ovechkin, they spend almost 90% of their team's power play minutes on the ice. Matthews is close to 70%. Matthews is close to 70%. Tavares and Nylander were under 60%. And
well, they used to take him off after a minute.
Yeah, and that's insane.
They leave him out.
That is Austin Matthews won the Rocket Richard Trophy last year, playing significantly less time on the power play than both Draisaitl and Ovechkin.
But you could put Enval in.
Actually, now that I remember, that was Babcock did the same, and then they changed it to Keith. I'm like, oh fuck, they're finally gonna be able to play some minutes. And I think he was playing the more 5-on-5 a little bit more. The Stars, but not power play.
Coach. They fired the power play.
Yeah, because it was a fucking
it
was goddamn penalty killer. Who was it last time?
Was it Malhotra?
Yeah, the guy who spent 4 seconds on the power play in his career. Yeah.
Now, would you guys ever be down to see a 5-forward PP1 and putting? All right,
when
take it away, baby.
When Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe were running the Toronto Marlies, Kyle Dubas approached Sheldon Keefe and said, "Hey, you want to try this?" And he was like, "Kyle, leave me alone." Basically, like they are
like my
girlfriend. Good friends. They are very good friends, but they do bicker a lot. And I know that this was one point of contention where there were probably a couple of screaming matches. You know, just try it. You know, what do you have to lose? They tried it. They got scored on a whole bunch. It was okay offensively, but just the defense, you know, part of it we're sacrificing where the other team, I don't know if that was just a coincidence. I haven't watched those specific power plays to see what had went wrong, but I know that Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe tried this with the Toronto Marlies, and I don't know if Keefe is going to be as open to trying it again.
Yeah, and fair enough. The reward offensively is probably not like it's probably outweighed by the risk.
Especially because we are scoring now. That last year made sense when we legit couldn't score because it was like why not? and Riley objectively wasn't as good last year as he was this year, but. This year we're scoring, right? It's like me trying to say put Marner on PP2. Like I'm aware that he's better on PP1, but my thought process is how much better would PP2 be compared to PP1 if he was on that?
If you're going to split time anyways.
And
you have to factor in the time.
And I mean, also to be fair to Mitch Marner, he plays a lot at 5-on-5. He plays a lot on the penalty kill as well. I know the power play has always sort of been his bread and butter. I mean, we need to remember that I believe his rookie season, the Maple Leafs had one of the most efficient power plays in NHL history, and he was part of that. So it's like I have a hard time believing that he's the reason why they struggle at times. But in seeing the numbers, with Austin Matthews compared to without, obviously he does need talented shooters around him in order to be effective. That shouldn't be a knock against him. He doesn't necessarily have a shot, but he's that elite playmaker. He has a lot of vision. He's able to see plays before they happen, which is why I really like the idea of putting him behind the goal line.
Yeah.
Right?
Putting Tavares out or Nylander on.
They did that a bit, didn't they?
They
did. They have
do it for a little bit
behind it.
I believe there was a goal that John Tavares scored earlier in the season on the power play where Mitch Marner was standing behind the net and passed him the puck. And it was an awesome shot that Tavares went down on one knee to pull off.
I remember that.
And it was a nice
keep
goal.
going. I'm almost there.
All right, I'm uncomfortable now.
Okay. so speaking of power play 2 and the guy who is stirring the drink right now for Leafs offensively, Ilya Mccabe, can we all just agree that we should just enjoy him playing like rookie year Mccabe while we can, because he's gone? Can we just get over the fact like, oh, he wants this? Like we always do this with guys who are unrestricted.
Give him 8x5.
And we're like, like, how are we going to re-sign this guy who's playing so well? And it's like at a certain point, you just have to be like, no, let's just literally enjoy this guy playing like he did in his rookie season, which was awesome.
Are you talking about a certain article that was written last week?
I'm journal.
A little bit of that, but you also just see people who aren't even referring to the article directly anyways, that are just like, how are we going to like re-sign him? And it's like, no. Sandin, Liljegren, and who's the other guy that comes first? Campbell. And then even Kasha, who's an RFA. But
RFA.
Like, all of those things come before Ilya Mccabe. So he's not getting re-signed. And can we just enjoy how well he's been playing recently for the rest of the season and use him as a rental?
Well, hey, I mean, it's been, I mean, the trio of Engvall, Kampf, and Kasha has been excellent, right? And now that Mccabe is back, it's almost sort of a treat, to the point where they've been able to slot Mccabe, Kampf, and Kasha together, and now Engvall's down on that fourth line. And I really wanted that fourth line. I really want Jason Spezza to be able to play with some guys who can skate. Right, because Wayne Simmons, it's not a knock on Wayne Simmons. He's just not as fast as what he used to be. Nick Ritchie, forget about it.
He's not as fast as ever. He was
never fast. He was never fast.
No,
should have taken him over Nylander.
So I want someone down there to be able to take advantage of the way Jason Spezza still sees the ice, and probably not Engvall to do it. I mean, but at least, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't want to see Bunting knocked off that first line.
No.
But that fourth line with Michael Bunting was on it was going.
Yeah.
And that's a testimony to how good Michael Bunting is and how versatile so many of the forwards the Leafs are. Guys like Bunting, guys like Kerfoot, guys like Kasha, Sheldon Keefe must absolutely love those guys, because he can play them wherever the hell he wants, whenever, and he doesn't even need to say anything. He just like Michael, today you're on the fourth line. He's just like, okay, you know, and he just makes it happen.
I was in the AHL last year. I'll play wherever. Yeah.
This team, whenever you see any of the reporters or whatever that kind of watch the practices or the pregame practices that tell us the lineups, almost always I'm like, holy shit, that's sick. I'm like, that might work. Last year I was like, oh yeah, if Travis Boyd with Matthews might do something. Yeah.
Give me VC.
And now I see, he scored fucking 30 goals in college. That should be fine. That was 8 years ago in college. But like, and this will go more into like the trade deadline stuff that we talk about soon. But like you were saying, it's so versatile. It's one of the reasons why I think. Actually, question: without spoiling your article, is your answer to the Kasha, Bunting, Matthews question keep them where they are, without saying anything else?
No, he said Marner, Matthews, Bunting.
Okay, so you want that?
I do. My answer to the question. I could spoil it a little bit. My what I'm coming towards at the end of my article is Kasha, probably not right now. If you needed him to, he'd be great there. but definitely a guy who you should look to get more ice on nights where other guys aren't going.
I'll ask the question again when I go through my trade deadline stuff because I have another question.
Yeah,
Sure.
but and that is going to bring us to our trade. So I asked everyone before this podcast to think of at least 2 potential trade targets that don't have to be rumored by people in the NHL because the trade deadline is a while away. But we all know that Dubas likes to make deals about 2 weeks to a month prior to the trade deadline. Anyways, we're going to start with you, Mark. I want to hear your 2 deals. And for people, if you want to explain like maybe what you think it would take to get them, or we can chat about that together, but mainly just go over like.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because
I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to jump in super quick. Reminder too, the Olympic, that condensed schedule starts in 3 weeks. So is there not a chance that like Dubas does this by then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the fact that we had to sit Sandin,
you can do it anytime, obviously.
The cap is kind of scary, and I kind of want to make a move to free up space so that doesn't happen again.
You can also say fuck space because Pridham will just figure it out.
Yeah. But also in that Rasmus Sandin situation, he came back and played that Ottawa game, played over 20 minutes a night, coming back from having COVID and the knee injury. He played in the Colorado game. He played in the Vegas game. He came back full force, 100%.
10 hits.
The rest is not an awful thing, but he was taken out of the lineup for cap considerations.
Yeah. Okay, so my 2 guys, I have no idea what we would have to give up or if they could even fit in. That's what you guys are here for.
Vasilevsky as our backup.
Oh yeah, and also before, I do suck at fantasy football. This is my punishment for coming last in my league.
Good job, buddy.
So first is defenseman Klingberg from the Dallas Stars.
I went straight to the rumor mill.
Yep.
We weren't supposed to go to the rumor mill. I went straight to
I had to. I need a defenseman, and I think him next to Muzzin would be epic.
Yep.
Now it's up to you guys. Could he fit? Could we get him?
Downtown, we'll start with you because Dan and I already kind of talked about this in the last podcast, so I want to hear your opinion.
I'm just looking over it to see how much money he makes.
6.5.
So he's at 4.25, and he's a UFA at the end of this season.
Mm-hmm.
So it would purely be a rental. Now, looking at John Klingberg and the Dallas Stars so far this season, I know that he's frustrated that he doesn't have a contract for next year. So it sounds like he wants to stay. Dallas, I know they lost Jamie Alexiak to unrestricted free agency last offseason. They also have Jason Robertson to sign. They also have Joe Pavelski to sign. Ooh, I'm adding him to no, never mind.
They also have Alexander Radulov to sign.
Yeah.
What was that there, Brown?
There's a lot to add in under their salary cap for this upcoming season. I'm looking for John Klingberg on this list here. So John Klingberg's never really been known for his defense, but offensively, the power play as well. That's been sort of his bread and butter. And the Dallas Stars have sort of dropped off the last couple of seasons as well. So I'm not going to knock him on his plate too much. Definitely the $4.25 million would be doable. The Leafs, of course, when you're looking at their salary cap situation, it's a thing where they're probably going to have to move money out and get salary retained at the same time. But that's okay, because any additions that you would make, you'd be moving someone out anyway. And a team, like the guys that they'd be moving out, Justin Hall, we bag on him a lot, but I'm sure someone else can find some use for $2 million on their third pair for him. John Klingberg, I don't hate it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my first one. And number 2, this one's kind of a little more out there because it's with the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Oh, no, we were right.
Leafs getting Andre Palat.
What's his contract?
I think he's a UFA at the end of the season, so it's kind of another rental one.
So what would
4.5 mil?
But what would the benefit to Tampa be of getting rid of a good depth piece who is a rental for themselves?
Just because they're losing him at the end of the season,
right? But if they want to make a triple cut run,
you can pull back a Kerfoot so they could have another year of a guy.
No, I wouldn't do that deal. I would rather Kerfoot straight
no,
up.
I'm
for
not
Palat.
saying I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if
That's
we
what it
have
would take.
if we have a circumstance like that where a guy is going to be a UFA on a good team, you would have to more than likely give back someone who might not be as good but has term or saves money. Right? That would be what would go back. That would be the only way. Well, other than just fucking picks, but
yeah. What are your thoughts, Downtown?
On Andre Palat, I think the Tampa Bay Lightning hold on to him.
Yeah.
I think there are other options, but I definitely don't hate the player.
Mm-hmm. And Dan, what are your two?
My two? I have three now.
Okay.
I stumbled upon one when I was
I have three now too. I have three now too.
I will go back to the Dallas Stars here, and I'll pick out Joe Pavelski. Wasn't his nickname Captain America at some point, or am I just hallucinating that? I believe
you're right.
You know what would be more fun than having Captain America, the present version
Little Joe,
play on the same line with future Captain America, Austin Matthews, right? That'd be really cool. He's the guy who's 37 years old, who's still getting it done. He's played a lot in the playoffs in his career, 161 playoff games, 119 points, 61 goals.
Fuck.
He's got close to 900 points, over 400 goals in his career, and he's having an awesome season on the Dallas Stars. Now, the only asterisk that I would throw up next to it is that the Dallas Stars are 18-13-2 on the season, and they do have some games in hand over the St. Louis Blues, who are currently sitting third in the Central Division. It's unique this year because the trade deadline is not until March the 20th or March the 21st, so there's still a lot of games to be played between now and then. And the Dallas Stars could easily go on a run where they put themselves back into playoff contention, and then everyone that we're talking about from their team wouldn't be available. So I don't think that we're gonna see very many trades, if at all, before the deadline this year, just because there are so many games between now and then. I don't think we'll see any trades in February. I don't think we'll see any in the beginning of March either.
I mean, technically that means you could see more trades because there's more teams that are still unknown in a way. Right?
Yeah, but it's just like
I think you're right for sure.
They're gonna hang on to it for as long as they possibly can, but they're fifth right now. They're 6 points back of the Minnesota Wild, who aren't even in a playoff spot themselves unless they're in a wild card spot.
Are you not in a wild or a playoff spot in the West? Like,
so the wild card right now in the West, Minnesota and San Jose. So that means that the Dallas Stars they're 3 points behind the San Jose Sharks with 4 games in hand. So they definitely still have a chance, right? But the Oilers are there, the Jets are there, the Flames are there. There's still a lot of teams in front of them or in that mix as well. We're not going to know. My other two guys, I already ate up a lot of time talking about Joe Pavelski, would be from the Chicago Blackhawks, both of them. And they're both forwards. I'm going to take Brandon Hagel and Dominic Kubalik. Dominic Kubalik actually played a lot with David Kampf over the last couple of seasons, and the two were very successful together. Brandon Hagel is a guy who can be effective for you at 5-on-5. He's used to being the third guy on a line, as I believe he's played primarily with Patrick Kane and whoever the center is there, either Jonathan Toews or Dylan Strome. So he's used to being the third guy on a line, and he's been successful in that role. Can contribute on your penalty kill and your power play as well. Just a useful player who signed for 2 more years after this one, I believe, at $1.5 million. I don't know if they part with that, but they got a lot of guys to re-sign this offseason as well, including Dominic Kubalik, who'd be an RFA at the end of this season, and probably not getting close to the $3.7 million or so that he made. That's another guy who it may be a prime candidate for the Leafs to sign as a non-tendered option.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I'm gonna. Sorry. You keep going because I was just gonna jump in at the end.
No. Like I was saying, like they signed Nick Ritchie, Andre Kasha, and David Kampf, who were all non-qualified by their teams. But Dominic Kubalik making $3.7 million worth of qualifying offer would have to be somewhat similar to that. The Blackhawks have other guys to re-sign, and with him only having 12 points in 36 games this year, 6 goals, I don't see.
Who's he playing with?
Primarily Kirby Dach and whoever else is on that line. It's not
Yeah.
it's not DeBrincat. Sorry. It's not DeBrincat, and it's not Jonathan Toews either. He's
He
playing with
scored
Kirby Dach
40
and
2
someone
years
else.
ago, or was that 3 years ago?
He scored 30 in his rookie season.
Okay, that was it. So I keep talking about trading Marner all the time. Slash Austin Matthews, I'll compare him to like Sidney Crosby in a way that you could just have, the
Rodriguez.
well, you can have your creative players, right? Buzz Philbin and shit on your on his wings. Now, what if the answer? I love that third line. I love the idea of defensive third line or whatever. And you saying Kubalik just kind of stroked my ego a little bit on what I was thinking. What if you make if you get another player and you can create 4 true lines on the Leafs in a way that you make that third line still that defensive line. So your thing was Kubalik, put Kubalik on the third line, or we don't even have to call them first, second, third, fourth anymore, or first, second, third, and Kubalik on that line and put Marner or throw Nylander on the wing. And then now you have 3 like elite lines. Go Bunting, Matthews, Kasha, Kerfoot, Tavares, Nylander, or Marner, and then you have Kampf, Kubalik, and Marner or Nylander. And then you have your fourth line be Spezza, Mikheyev, and whoever.
So I think with any of these trades and I'm gonna get to some of my options, which kind of fit the mold of what Downtown was looking at, is like you want to give your team as many options within the postseason as you possibly can. What we've noticed the past couple seasons is that our scoring, if our top lines aren't scoring, we're not going to win any rounds. So
did I not just answer that?
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, yes,
okay.
It doesn't have to be just a Kubalik. Anyone that we get, I would want to be able to fit on a top line if you needed them to be. They don't have to be necessarily a top line player, but you can give the option so that you can either stack 2 lines or you can have a very well-rounded lineup depending on what team you play, that like if your scoring isn't coming from the top lines, you can just go straight to that. And I think that like what you were talking about, like with Kubalik, or even Mark was going with like the Palats of the world, like we want someone who can play anywhere up and down the lineup, and it wouldn't be like, oh no, this guy's on our first line, right? Because last year what happened when Tavares got out? Kerfoot was our second line center, and I don't care like how bad Montreal is showing to be, but like that's not a cup winning team, even if we would have made it out of the first round.
No.
So you're agreeing with me that they should trade for Joe Pavelski then, because he could.
Yes, absolutely.
No, so that's why I wanted to lead after Brown too, because I was going to say Dylan Strome, which was my same idea of getting a third center. Because are you not wasting Austin Matthews if he can play with anybody? So are you not wasting him by not stretching the lineup more? I think you're fucking wasting him. Right? Crosby won those cups with fucking all those like random guys on his line because they could stretch out the lines. They had Jordan Staal on the third line and they could spread out the wingers.
I say you leave it the way that it is and you only spread it out if you absolutely need to.
But you have the option.
But if you have many extra players that you kind of have to, or it's just like, oh, we can just do this. Right? By getting Pavelski, by getting Kubalik, then it's just like obvious. It's like no one, the idea, remember I've always brought up like trying to almost demote Marner, but it's not really a demotion. Like, is it so much of a demotion for Marner on power play too if you say you're running it now?
But what I think Downtown is saying, and based on his article, is that Matthews is objectively better with Marner on his line. So you want to keep those top 2 lines if you can. But if they're not scoring 2 games into the playoffs, you have the option now to be like, okay, we're rounding out our lines because you guys aren't performing. We have never had that option.
Okay, yeah,
before.
you know what? You're right, because they're going to be facing elite talent. And if you have Rantanen, Landeskog, and McKinnon on one line, I kind of don't want those stretch lines.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do think the answer is get another forward, like Downtown was saying, Pavelski, or
I really like the Pavelski idea, and then I have a couple ideas which kind of fit that mold.
Go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say that if there's not a defenseman who you absolutely love, that you are not paying through the nose for, if there's not a defenseman out there that would fit playing next to Jake Muzzin, I say don't force it. Mm-hmm. Just try to improve the team the most that you possibly can in whatever area it is, right? If that forward that you acquire is going to improve your team more overall than just getting any defenseman, to play next to Muzzin other than Hall, or if Hall can somewhat find his game. Like getting an upgrade on Hall, I think it does improve the team that is where they need it the most. But if you can improve the team more by just going out and getting the best player available, I say go out and get the best player available. Because there still is room for other guys to grow and move up in the lineup, like Sandy and Milligan.
So I think almost for the forward group, my thought process is best player available, and my defense is just only if he fits with Muzzin.
Giordano, he's not even on my list, but
the same way they were trying to do with Foligno, right? They were trying to insert a perfect fit. They're like, this is the perfect building block. And then Foligno's like, hey, what if I don't play?
Like Kyle Dubas just spent 4 hours scouring through a giant bin of Lego and finally pulled out the 3x8 piece that nobody has. And he was able to finish building his Lego Death Star or something like that. So
you were kind of talking to Brown, and then I kind of switched my tune again with my defenseman because I was like, oh, Calvin DeHaan. And I'm like, no, that's not the fit. That's like a Ben Hutton Jr. So then I went to Vince Dunn on Seattle because Seattle sucks and he gets paid $4 million for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Is he really?
Yeah. No, sorry, this year and next. My bad.
Okay. So I'm going to run off the Vince Dunn because I like a deal like that. Yeah, wow. Now, I have a couple defensemen on my list. The first, all of my guys are rentals because I don't think that we should pay the price to get a guy for long-term because we do have prospects coming up. We do have guys we need to resign. So my 2 defensemen rentals are Keith Yandle and Josh Manson. Josh Manson, we were rumored to get him last year. That was the whole thing, was just going to cost a lot because it was last year's controlled and this year controlled. He's a UFA after this year. He makes 4.1. He's a guy you could put with Muzzin, and you don't even have to go through a 3-team deal because it's a $4 million deal. Now, Anaheim is in a bit of a playoff hunt, so I don't know if they're going to want to do something like that. But if they drop off, because we didn't expect them to be this good, if they drop off, that is someone that I think is going to be floating around, and I think would be a perfect fit on a rental to play with a Jake Muzzin. The other guy is Keith Yandle. Now, I know he's a bit of an offensive defenseman, but he's only 2.3 million. He has pretty good points this year. I think since Gostisbehere's left, he's their number 1 power play defenseman on the Flyers. Could be Provorov though. But he's another guy that would be very low cost. Philadelphia isn't making the playoffs, and he's a veteran defenseman, has had good stats when he's in the playoffs. And he could be one of those guys where I don't know if you necessarily put him with Muzzin, but it could add that depth for a very low cost at a low cap hit of a veteran defender. So those are my 2 defensemen. What do you guys think of those options?
Josh Manson,
take it away.
Josh Manson, I know that I spoke about him in a video that I did the other day. He is that defensive defenseman. He does play a heavy defensive role. He is playing a lot of minutes. You know, he's been mainly paired with Cam Fowler. And if you think of the type of player that Cam Fowler is, you know, he's an offensive guy, a little bit of a two-way guy as well. Jake Muzzin, you know, if he could just pick one, if he could be, you know, the offensive guy, or if he could be the defensive guy, if that's all he can do at this point, fine. Pick one of them, do one of them really well. We'll get someone else next to you to compliment you. You know, we'll get somebody else to finally be the one that props you up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the answer.
In Keith Yandle, I don't hate the name. I think we can shoot a little bit higher.
Yeah, I think that's another Ben Hutton.
Ivan Provorov was a name that I initially glanced over because the Philadelphia Flyers just seem nuclear right now.
Suck.
They seem absolutely nuclear right now, and he's a guy that has that scoring touch. I believe he scored over 15 goals like 2 times in the last 4 years or something like that. Same draft year as Marner. I believe he signed for $6.5 million for the next 4 or 5 years. So that'd be a bit of a challenge. I don't know what they would be asking for him, but they seem like they are absolutely in nuclear mode, especially with all the news that dropped the other day about what Ron Hextall just did on his own when he was there.
Yeah.
What would
Go ahead.
What would Claude Giroux cost?
He's too high cap hit. Too high cap hit.
8 mil.
Nothing is too high of a cap hit when you have a vivid imagination. I am imagining him wearing blue right now. It looks very, very good. Cap hit is irrelevant. We can sort of figure it out there. Another guy who you could look at on the Flyers. I mean, it's just really hard to pick the carcass of a team that sucks
Yeah.
because you're not sure how that player is going to fit into
Foligno, right?
what you're doing. It's hard to go from, one team where your mental state is just so locked in as to what's going around this one specific team, and then you move to a different team and it's like, oh my god, they're prioritizing everything else, right? It's hard to make that mental shift. Claude Giroux is obviously a professional. He's been in the NHL for a very, very long time. If he were to be available and they could do it, I mean, Claude Giroux, Joe Pavelski, whatever.
His contract's up.
Cam Atkinson is another guy that I would love to have. I've always loved him.
Cam
He's center? No, he's a right winger.
He's very good as well. They traded him for Jacob Voracek. Like I said, they just seem absolutely nuclear. I don't know what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
But a guy like Claude Giroux, I mean, I'm just looking at his stats here.
He's leading their team in points, aren't they?
Flyers,
he's such a boss.
The Flyers haven't had very much playoff luck the last number of seasons.
Oh, that's what you call it?
He's had 73 points in 85 playoff games, 25 goals. And I mean,
and they were all in that Pittsburgh series where the games were 7-6 every game.
He had one playoff, sorry, in the 2011-2012 season. He played 10 games and had 17 points. So whatever happened to the Flyers there, Claude Giroux is spectacular.
Yeah. Love that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting. I don't know how we do that without giving up someone else that we
It'd
really
have to be
like.
a lot, probably.
I would prefer Pavelski over Giroux, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So
does Giroux have another year?
No.
He's UFA.
Okay. You'd have to.
He could be, it's actually. So I have a couple forwards here, and I'm going to start off with the one that I think you guys might disagree with the most, and this might just be the old-fashioned Leaf fan in me, but Max Domi would cost absolutely fucking nothing. He would cost negative $5.3 million contract, which ends after this year with Columbus. He can hardly even get in their lineup, but he has shown that he can play a top 6 role, and they don't like him there. So if you can go out and get a guy who could possibly be a perfect playoff player in Max Domi for 1 year and then he's gone, that would be something that I could.
Isaac's right. He's playing 13 minutes a night in Columbus.
What
the fuck?
They hate him. So
why?
You could.
Why?
What's their center depth?
He's got 16 points.
Bring him home.
Games too.
Wait, what centers do they even fucking have?
Patrick Laine has been out as well. I don't know. Columbus is another weird team.
So
he's got 16 points in 24 games with 13 minutes. Like that's pretty good, man. Man,
he can play that grinder role. You could put him on a wing, which he was always a better winger than he was a centerman. It's kind of like a Kerfoot scenario where like you take a little bit of the defensive pressure off a guy and you can play a little bit more loose. Max Domi could be someone where you could make that 5.3 cap work. You don't have to give up much, probably assets, and it would be like you might even be able to get him for a second round pick. And I don't know about you guys, I would take him in a second for like a low end prospect in a second round pick.
Imagine the headlines like Domi coming home.
It'd be better than Foligno.
You would have to retain that.
I worry about the potential pressure that could put on him, but you put him in a position to succeed. You allow him to grow with the Toronto crowd if there ever is a crowd. Maybe if they play the rest of the season with no fans in the building.
Yeah.
What a perfect time.
That would take off a lot of pressure. But I mean, look, we have our leaf colored glasses on all the time. It would be absolutely amazing to see Max Domi in that lineup. It was amazing to see him perform as well as he did at the World Juniors in 2015 in that building. Right? It was electric in front of that Toronto crowd. And he thrived off of it. Like he had that goal where he stuck out his tongue and skated by and stuff like that. I feel like if they were winning if he was,
I know what you're going to say.
If he was on the team and they won this year, it would just be so much better with him on it.
Yeah.
It would just be so much more fun. Because he's just like Michael Bunting,
So that's exactly what I was going to say.
It's much more fun when you win, when you have those guys on your team.
It's another thing.
Because they make wins so much more fun.
It's another thing where when Tavares got out, we were all like, okay, like we can still maybe meet Montreal, but it was like, damn, you kind of need to hope that the top 4 don't get injured for us to have a chance. A guy like Max Domi can step into, he was for a while in Columbus playing a first line center role. In Montreal, he was playing a second line center role. Granted, he wasn't the absolute best, but that's an option that you have if someone does, God forbid, get injured in the playoffs, where you can plug him in and it's better than a Kerfoot playing in a center. That's my thought process on it. It would be super cool to have him here. Maybe it's just that Ty was one of my favorite Leafs, but
yeah.
I think the big thing is, do we all have agreements that if we're going to pick a forward, that maybe getting a decent center is the answer?
Yeah. Domi or Pavelski.
One that fits that mold, that is versatile.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That could play up and down your lineup, center, wing, and stuff like that.
Domi,
because you already have 4 out of the top 6 spots locked, right? You just need to fill in the gaps around there, and like I think to safeguard it.
I think our wingers are really versatile, but they look a lot less versatile when you see like bad centers around them or in front of, like in the middle of them, right? Like if you have if you have Kerfoot there, you have Mccabe and Cash on the other side, you go, but you know, if you have Pavelski there and you say Mccabe and Kasha, that looks really good.
Yeah.
Right. Looks really good.
That's and my last one is just a throw in. Rickard Rakell, another guy we were rumored to get last year, is UFA, $3.8 million, having a great season. And once again, Anaheim looks like they're in a playoff hunt, but if things go south, he's another guy that I would love to see. Whenever I watch him play, and granted it's only like 2 times a year, I love the way that guy plays. But I've always liked players similar to him. I don't know if Kasha played with him in Anaheim at all, but that's just another option where it's like he would probably cost a little bit more than guys like Domi and stuff like that. But if you're going to go out and get a real top 6 player, that first line of Matthews, Marner, and Rickard Rakell would look real nice. So that was just my last
Rakell
one.
right now?
Anaheim.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's just those are just some options. Giordano is always going to be my number one. Although seeing Manson there, if they do drop off, it's a lot less cap hit. You probably wouldn't have to go to a third team like Downtown was saying. You might have to in a Giordano trade. So who knows? We're just Leaf fans making stuff happen.
But ironically, these random ones are probably more realistic, which is funny.
Yeah, honestly, because
there's still just so much up in the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be in it, who's going to be out of it, and you never know. You might see one general manager that his team's floating around 500, but he's just an absolute mad lad and decides to just say, "I'm getting fired at the end of this year anyway. I don't give a shit. I want to try to win as many games as possible."
Columbus model.
Yeah. There may be a team like that this year.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we've gone way over what we originally thought, as always. Great conversation. Always appreciate you having on. When you were talking about that article Downtown, where did you say it was going to be, and when is it going to be out?
It'll be out tomorrow on the LeafsNation.com.
LeafsNation.com.
Right on.
So send us the link. We'll post it in the show notes. And everyone, if you haven't already, I'm sure you've checked out his channel. He goes a lot more in depth with us. He actually has stats on the screen instead of just talking about eye tests. So if you want a little bit more objective take of the Leafs, go check him out at Downtown Sports. And thanks again for coming on.
Thanks,